Hello and welcome to Clashes of the Week here on Talk Radio. I'm Phil Dave, coming up.
If you keep interrupting me, Steve, I'm going to be annoyed.
Well, we could process
and you're
them
making
in
yourself
France.
look stupid, Steve, which I don't think is something you really want to do. I want to actually get some answers to some points I'm trying to find out.
Well, we haven't spoken about illegal migration for at least, 2 weeks? So, better change that, I suppose. Also...
Oh, do you know what? Sorry, I chopped off for a second. I had this really weird dream, right? This fella called the show. What's his name? Matthew, that was it. And, well, that was real!
What could Mr. Collins be talking about? Well, he's referring to possibly one of the most bizarre calls I think we have ever had on Talk Radio. And that's saying something. Plus...
James, just hear me out. You know, you are trying to put it too simplistically. May I ask you what was Great Britain doing? May I ask you what America was doing? Well, it is. You know, you're talking about...
I'm asking you a simple question. A simple question.
You never answered my simple question. I asked you a simple question. Did Great Britain walk the talk? No, they did not.
All that and more on Clashes of the Week. But first, illegal crossings across the Channel continue to prove the most horrific problem for the good people of Kent. There have been many attempts over the past week based on good weather and calm waters. 2,350 have arrived via small boats in this month alone. James Whale and Ash brought this up on The Late Show a couple of days ago. They discussed it with Steve Crawshaw, Policy and Advocacy Director at Freedom from Torture.
If we don't share things, then that we may think it makes us safer and better off, but actually it doesn't. It makes the whole system unstable and it shows the lack of empathy,
Steve.
Which I don't think is part of the British public.
You're missing the point, Steve. And I've noticed all the flipping virtual signalling of lovies and so-called celebrities saying they're taking people into their own homes. It's turning a lot of people against them, it has to be said. But nobody wants people coming in here unless they're checked. There is absolutely no reason why we can't have places made where these people coming in can be kept legitimate. Over here.
Checks are absolutely legitimate. That's what happens. You arrive.
Then we need to have a place or some.
But they're in danger when they cross the channel.
That's what the UN Refugee Convention allows for, which Britain helped to shape 70 years ago, was proud of doing, and that overturned the crazy system.
But you see, the biggest problem,
where we just brought the shutters down. That's
the biggest problem is that it's not a problem. Actually, it's a great thing. We are an island. It is not as easy to come in here as it is to go from one landlocked country to another. We are an island, and at the ports we will have nothing but congestion. Kent at the moment, there are all kinds of problems with people who are and then coming up on the beach and then disappearing.
Well, that's why we need to process them in France, because we need to stop them from endangering their lives in the Channel.
Kent has some brilliant groups, the Kent Refugee Action Network and others, of those who really understand the difficulties that people have gone through. Yeah. And that I really welcome. I think it is
break into the country. I don't think there's anything. No, they just in the country. They're breaking in, and if they break into your house and rob you, or break into your house and take, I suppose you'll say that's okay because they're not really they're not having an easy time of it. You should
But as you know, it's not breaking in. It's actually what the Refugee Convention allows for. If you're fleeing,
I don't care about all those conventions. I care about my country. I care about people coming in here. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned, like a lot of people, and you ignored the question I just said. So if somebody comes here and then they break into your house because they haven't got any food or money, because they broke into the country, they hid in a lorry, they got out up the road on the M20 or something, and then they look for somebody to rob. You think that's okay? We should say, that's okay because, you're escaping
looking for someone to rob. They didn't look for someone to rob. They looked for a safe place. That's why I'm
not ignoring your question. Don't come here illegally.
By saying
it's
they're
easy.
Not looking for someone to rob. They're looking for safety.
But they're in danger. Look at those people that all suffocated in the lorry. 29 people, wasn't it? I mean, that's why it should all be processed in France, because what you're advocating
and the bloke got 2 years for that.
But look at what other European countries managed to do. So
we're not other European countries, Steve.
Well, we can process them in France.
We're out of the European dictatorship.
We are part of the continent. We may not be part of the European Union, but there's still a continent, including the
No,
islands.
we're Great Britain, Stevie. You're so behind the times, mate. We are a sovereign nation.
Which continent are we part of? Asia? Are we part of America? Which continent are we part of? I think in the broader continental sense, the same.
Don't take the. I don't like it, Steve. It really annoys me. We are a sovereign nation, all right?
Correct.
We got rid of the European dictatorship who couldn't organise in a brewery, and we are now getting a lot of stick from people who say, we should be doing more. We are doing an enormous amount for a reasonably small nation with very little accommodation, even for its own people. Why on earth don't we have a go at... Why don't you go to France and have a go at them? Go and tell the French government they should be looking after people better.
We wouldn't run camps like they do, treating people like they do in France. That's disgusting.
France can certainly be criticised, as you rightly say, on many different levels. But in terms of the numbers they're taking, it's far greater. As I'm sure you're aware, it's several times larger than Britain.
They're not taking, they're breaking into their country and they can't do anything about it. We can.
So should they all stay in Poland, for example? Should everybody, should all 10 million stay in Poland?
Well, no, we can process them and take our fair share.
Yeah.
Look, let me be perfectly clear. If it weren't for the UK being generous towards my ancestors, I wouldn't be here right now. However, I cannot understand for the life of me why anyone excuses illegal migration. Again, the word is illegal. If people are fleeing for their lives, they're not in danger when they get to mainland Europe. Do you understand what a migration policy actually does? It deliberately limits the number of people who are allowed to legally live in the UK. Not because they're heartless, and not because they want to see anyone suffer, but because there needs to be the infrastructure in place to absorb additional people into mainstream society. So let's put this into perspective, shall we? There are many people who live here now who struggle to get their children into schools, who struggle to get an appointment at the doctor's, and who struggle to buy a house. It's all down to supply and demand, and we cannot cope as it is with what we've got now, never mind adding thousands of others each month. We need people to come here legally. We need to prioritise those who are genuinely in danger and make sure that those individuals coming here are not a threat to those who are already living on these shores, namely legal British citizens. James Whale and Ash are with you Monday to Thursday between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. right here on Talk Radio. I would like to think that most of us can see the images coming out of Ukraine and recognise that there are the most horrific things going on over there at the moment. Now, you know I love when callers are responsible for clashing with us here at the home of common sense, but I have to say that sometimes there are limits as to the crackpot theories that I can tolerate, and I believe even Ian Collins has his limits, as he found out when he spoke with Matthew in Derby.
To be honest, I don't know. They've sent me the videos and whatnot.
I mean, I'm only saying that because obviously there's clear evidence that there's some horrendous things going on in Ukraine, bombings and killings on a daily basis, witnessed by journalists and people who've come out of there. So you think that's a lie?
What? Yeah, I do. Yeah. So
So you don't think you don't think any of that's what you're seeing on the news is true?
No, not at all. I mean, if there was a war, I believe that Russia would be there 2 hours and it'd be done. There's no war. They're doing a strategic military operation. They've taken out the biolabs, the USA biolabs, which is now fact. That's not a conspiracy theory.
Well, there's nothing, but every country has biolabs. There's nothing wrong with biolabs. Where have you got that from? That they've done that? Who told you that?
The US Gov website.
No, who told you that they've taken out the biolabs and that was their reasoning?
Oh, well, it's been reported all over the news
internet.
As well.
Yeah. So, in terms of like bombing schools and theatres and hospitals, what's your take on that?
They're not bombing any schools or.
All those the people that were there and witnessed it, and the journalists that are reporting it, they're all lying.
They're lying. Yeah, it's the same as what you do quite a lot.
Yeah.
On a daily basis.
Except they're not. I mean, that's the strange thing about this conversation. You're literally telling me a black wall is white.
No, I'm not. I mean, there's plenty of evidence now. I mean, everything we're seeing is on green screens.
Because you saw that on social media.
I don't have social media.
Of course you do. Where have you seen the green screen thing then?
I see it when you guys, or the mainstream media, put the clips on, and you can just kind of easily see it.
Really? So you think like over there at the Sky newsroom, the UK newsroom, the BBC, everybody knows that, and nobody's.
Yeah. Because I think
you actually believe this stuff.
Yeah.
Hang on. Don't say something massively controversial and then like palm it off as if that's not worth pursuing.
I just want to explain that why they're doing this at the moment.
Yes.
Obviously, if we had countries on our borders, say in Wales, with biochemical labs, and the people that are running the country are really, really not nice people. Neo-Nazis.
They're not neo-Nazis. Are not running Ukraine.
Right, so we in the mainstream media have clubbed together to create some sort of Hollywood movie set, have we? How about you try saying that to the people who have lost family members over in Ukraine? Oh, and by the way, neo-Nazis are not running Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky is Jewish, you moron. And I can safely tell you, as a man of Jewish faith myself, Jews are not neo-Nazis. I do genuinely have a major concern that people like that are even actually allowed to vote. Now, I'm all for democracy, but I believe that if people like that are really thinking like that, they probably need some sort of help, not the right to vote. The only thing that I can think of, and let's be clear, I'm no psychologist here, maybe it's a coping mechanism. The world around us is so abhorrent that the only way to handle it is to believe that it's somehow all make-believe. Apparently, we lie every day on the radio. Well, at least that's what the caller says. So if that is the case, this isn't Clashes of the Week. You're not listening or possibly watching talk radio. And I'm not Phil Dave. Oh, and I absolutely didn't go up and hug someone hello who turned out not to be the person I thought they were this week. Well, never mind about that. Anyway, funny how that chap knew all of that stuff and didn't even have access to the internet. Next, he'll be telling us that the moon landings never happened. That would be original. Good grief. It's not terribly often that in the wee small hours we are treated to a conversation worthy of this programme. However, James Max returned from his holiday in a somewhat feisty mood, and on the receiving end was Brijesh Pandey, a senior journalist at News X channel. They were discussing India's stance on the situation in Ukraine, and in particular the concerns of the West over the fact that India continues to trade with Russia, despite many other countries imposing sanctions.
Ukraine may be learning in the very hard way, but aren't we also learning about the change in the world order? That even China isn't particularly supporting Vladimir Putin in this, and it would appear as if India has not been strong enough in its condemnation of Vladimir Putin and what he's doing, and the humanitarian crisis that he has caused, and the death and the destruction that he is raining upon those who live in Ukraine.
Well, absolutely. See, I mean, nobody in his right mind, as I said before, would support any action which result in death and destruction, death of children, women, and to see that, that entire ethnicity is being uprooted from that country and is forced to live in exile, and the kind of destruction which any war follows. But I think, the world also needs to do a very hard assessment of the fact that in how many ways they have practically led Ukraine down. Ukraine has been asking for fighter pilots, fighter planes. Ukraine has been asking for all kind of help from Western country, and other than financial punitive measures, not hard measures, help has been given to Ukraine.
Okay, one final question, Brijesh. One final question to you. So, is it wrong for India to take Russian oil?
Can you please repeat the question?
Is it wrong for India to take or buy Russian oil?
I don't know. I mean, if you ask me personally, I can't speak for the government. I, as a journalist, can speak for myself. And, as I said, that any such situation, be it war or any such situation which emerges, we have to ensure that, that peace and stability is there in the world. And if Russia started it, there cannot be, you cannot go ahead and say that, what Russia has done is wrong. But, as you're trying to box situation into these kind of very simplistic analysis of saying that
but
Russia,
India, hang on a second.
Just hear me out, James. James, just hear me out. You are trying to put it too simplistically. May I ask you what was Great Britain doing? May I ask you what America was doing? Well, it is. You're talking about.
I'm asking you a simple question. A simple question.
See, you never answered my simple question. I asked you a simple question. Did Great Britain walk the talk? No, they did not. Did America walk the talk? No, they did not. Ukraine has been left to fend for itself. You are pulling.
Yes, because we didn't want to start World War III.
So, and you don't want to start the World War III, and yet you expect India to do all the talking. That doesn't happen, my dear friend.
No, I don't.
You don't want to start the world.
I don't expect you to do that, but India is buying Russian oil.
James, you can try to hide behind
India is buying Russian oil.
Situation is far more complex than that. India may be buying Russian, but they are definitely not letting down a country up the garden path, and they left it there to be killed.
You're giving Russia
is finding it the first.
Unbelievable. You're giving Russia
anything. See, we know for sure. We have read enough international history to know for sure that once the war ends, your country and America will be the first to rush off to engage Russia in is this crisis for the last 25 days or 40 days? No, this is not the problem. Countries which are more powerful, countries which are more advanced, countries which are geographically located to inflict more damages have been found more severely wanting. This is one reality which you're not willing to accept. If you're not willing to accept the reality, there's nothing much anybody can do about it.
But the reality I'm willing to...
Was Great Britain's...
what a lot of nonsense. Do put a sock in it, really. I mean, Brajesh, I cannot see how you can defend your... country's use of cheap Russian oil, which is fueling this crisis, when you see the death and destruction on the ground.
The same way I cannot fathom that how you can defend the country when you knew for sure for the last 1 year that the situation had come to a flashpoint. There was a simmering tension. This was something which was waiting to happen, and yet your country, America, and other superpowers chose to ignore it. They led Ukraine up the garden path, and they left to fend for itself.
I will say one thing. I do agree when Brajesh says that most nations will look after their own interests before thinking of others. And, if you think about it, we've done that here, really. We could have easily have sent in troops over to help the Ukrainian military efforts, but we didn't. We went for the Russian purse strings instead. However, I think there is one heck of a difference between looking after one's own interests and doing nothing to help. Let's say hypothetically that the money that comes from trade with India goes into additional military for Russian action. It's curious how different countries view the situation. Obviously, I, like many others, get a bit twitchy when we in the West start sticking our noses into other countries' business. But at the same time, how can one idly stand by and watch something unfold when you know it has a potential disaster written all over it? And I'm afraid that any country that does business with Russia at the moment is potentially helping to fuel this somewhat ghastly situation. James Max is with you every Monday to Friday between 5 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. right here on Talk Radio. Now, let us learn about the wonders of a new group of tree huggers, shall we? You've heard of Insulate Britain, Extinction Rebellion. Well, now it's time for Just Stop Oil. Eco-protesters, don't you just love them? This shower run onto pitches of football matches and tie themselves using cable ties to goalposts. One of the said lunatics spoke with Julia Hartley-Brewer this week, one Louis McKechnie, who is a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil, or as we'll dub them, Just Stupid Oiks. Right, tongue firmly between the teeth, and roll VT.
There's a war on. We need an emergency response to Just Stop Oil now.
Sorry, how is no, you're not. Louis, stop reading out your latest press release and have a conversation with me. Louis, how is oil and gas killing people right now?
The IPCC and the UN both say it has to be stopped now. The scientists
I didn't ask you that. I asked, how is oil and gas killing people now?
How is it killing us? It's causing heat waves. It's causing floods. One in four football stadiums will be underwater by 2050.
Except they won't.
Are you a climate denier, Julia?
Now, you see, climate denial comes from people being Holocaust deniers. It's a ridiculous way of having a conversation. So if you want to have a sensible conversation, I can do that. I don't deny climate because climate is there. So that would be a silly thing to deny. What I do is question some of the ridiculous, outrageous, silly claims of some people who claim we're in a climate crisis or emergency, none of which have actually been borne out by any of the actual facts we've got. So I'm asked you again, how is oil and gas killing people?
So you're a denier of science then, Julia? You don't listen to the scientists?
No, I do listen to the science. I don't know. It's not possible to deny science. Science is
Julia,
an actual...
you have a 16-year-old daughter.
I don't
have.
I have a 15-year-old
daughter. What are you doing to protect her future
daughter
from this crisis?
Well, what I would like to do to protect her from this crisis would be for us to frack for shale gas and to build nuclear power stations.
Fracking will kill us even faster.
How will fracking kill us even faster?
It will destroy our lands, destroy our crops, destroy our crops.
How will it destroy our crops?
Julia, you're literally letting oil into the soil. I understand you're not a scientist, you don't come from a scientific background, but when the scientists say you need to just stop oil, you don't say, no, that would be inconvenient.
When you
listen.
We're into, wait a minute, Louis.
Suicidal.
The scientist, Cap T and Cap S. We heard a lot about the science during the COVID pandemic. The reality is there are a number of different opposing views on this. I'm not interested in who says something. I'm interested in the data and the back and what they've actually got. All of these things are based on climate models. Now, climate models have probably as much sense to them as we've seen with COVID models, which have proven to be utterly...
Get a grip, Julia. We're in the worst cost of living crisis ever.
Yeah, that's because we don't have a proper energy policy.
Fuels.
No, on the contrary, we're in a cost of living crisis because we haven't had reliable, secure and affordable fossil fuels. And if we did, then we wouldn't be where we are right now.
Fossil fuels can't be those things. Renewables are cheaper, more efficient, easier to produce and faster to create facilities.
Louis, they're not cheaper, they're subsidised at the moment. They're not reliable. You saw what happened in September.
Fossil fuels are subsidised by 25 million a day.
By
the government. You should know that if you've done your homework.
Oh, I do plenty of my homework. Renewables are only cheaper because they are subsidised to a much higher proportion, given how little they are actually contributing to where we are. I'm all in favour, Louis, of us moving towards cleaner energy as long as it is affordable and reliable and secure. The reality is there is no one sensible working anywhere in the energy market who thinks that we are going to tomorrow or even in the next 10 years move entirely to renewables. We don't have the ability to we can't even manufacture the battery power that we would need to try and retain a lot of the energy from solar power and wind power. That's not possible right now. I hope one day it will be. Let's put billions into developing that. That would be a great idea.
Julia,
but until
how
that
much
point,
do they pay you to betray your children's future? What's your price?
Louis, have you just accused me of being dishonest and corrupt? Be honest.
Precisely, yes.
You have.
You're meant to represent the British people.
I'm not meant to represent anyone but myself, Louis. How dare you?
You're representing the interests of the fossil fuel companies and the upper class.
The upper class. Oh, I'm a member of the upper class now. How nice. That'll come as news to my dad.
You can't eat money, Julia.
Oh, goodness. Louis, this...
Even Gary Lineker, he saw our protest.
Oh, well, if Gary
said whether
Lineker...
you approve of this young man's methods or not,
well, if Gary Lineker approved, then it must be okay.
His future is perilous, desperate times and all that.
Louis, when your argument is...
Okay, who will you listen to? If not the scientists, if not the celebrities, not the UN, who will you listen to?
When your argument is...
Who is the voice in your ear right now?
The voice in my ear is me actually investigating to this and actually looking at the realities on the ground.
Have you read the most recent IPCC report?
I've read the summary, and I'm guessing that's as much as you've read as well. Louis, when your entire argument is based on insulting the person asking you questions, I'm not entirely sure that you've got a strong argument. This is like sixth form college debating. You're supposed to be a student, but I thought at university, inability to actually debate on the facts, as I was trying to point out, there is nobody who is half sane or half knowledgeable in this field who thinks that we are going to be able to rely on renewables entirely or even mostly for the next decade, or at least, quite a few decades. We know that the West and indeed the developing world will be relying on fossil fuels. We want to have cleaner fossil fuels and we want to be getting them out more cheaply and securely. Why are you ignoring
signing
that
your
reality?
daughter's death sentence. You're a traitor to the British people. You're a traitor to your daughter.
And I'm murdering my child.
Oil destroys everything. Oil destroys civil rights. Oil destroys the economy. Oil destroys the air the ground, our very lives.
Yeah.
Oil will choke the future from your child in front of you. And in 20 years, when she asks you, what did you do to stop this? Your answer will be, I was paid not to.
I was paid not to. No one has ever told me what views to have. I think you can safely say, actually, my bosses would often prefer some of the views I have not to be given. I'm very happy to give opinions that are massively unpopular, even with my listeners, because they always know I tell them what I actually think. I find your attitude and what you've claimed and to be incredibly insulting and frankly demeaning, because I say, if you can't, I'm not arguing that you're being paid by someone to say this. I'm not arguing that you
because
don't.
Because I'm not being paid, but you are. What's
no, but the
price?
reality is you are getting
what
paid.
Is your price,
you'll
Julia?
be getting paid in my price is that my price for being on this show, my price is that I'm allowed to say what I think. That's my price on this show. Does that bother you? Are people allowed? Is it possible that someone could have a different opinion from you and not be corrupt and evil? Is that possible? Or does everyone have to agree with you, Louis?
But when your opinion
I'm entitled to my opinion, but you'll abuse me and say I'm corrupt.
In the planet, it's suicidal. You're dooming the future of all life on this earth. You have loved ones, Julia.
It's 2022. In 2050, when most of our football pitches are not underwater, when the world is still carrying on and we're still very much reliant on fossil fuels, will you come back on this show when you've got a job and a mortgage and your own children, who miraculously will also not have died? And will you say, sorry, Julia, I got it wrong?
Absolutely, I will. But if we don't just stop oil, we're not going to get to that future. If we don't just stop oil, my generation isn't going to have a future.
Oh, bless.
Have you ever heard such lunacy in your life? How on earth do the current generation think that we are the ones who are going to destroy the planet? For goodness only knows how many years we have been harvesting Mother Nature in whatever form it takes. I am completely with Julia there when she says about being all in favour to move towards a more sustainable form of energy, but not overnight. What a cheek, accusing Julia, or anyone with half an ounce of sense, as being corrupt. I love the thought of using that well-known environmentalist Gary Lineker as a barometer for this argument. Is it a wonder that any level-headed folk think that these individuals are bonkers? And to quote, oil will choke the future from your child in front of you. Genuinely, I think that is a comment worthy of help. I'm actually being serious. I feel slightly guilty for knowing that on this very show, I have given that chap a platform to express such a deranged opinion. I'm going to stop there because it would be wrong of me to lay into someone who is not here to answer for themselves. But Louis, if you're listening or indeed watching, I will happily discuss why you are completely and utterly wrong. Now, cyclist vigilantes. Those who go around filming everyone who makes a mobile phone call behind the wheel. Obviously, we know that that is not allowed or indeed condoned, but these individuals take the film to the police and drop the accused right in it, and subsequently a punishment is dished out. Well, a chap in Bristol has done something similar, but he's been warned that his civic efforts shouldn't bring him into conflict with other road users, and has been threatened with a £1,000 fine. Because in order to make his point with a van driver who was allegedly using his phone behind the wheel, he managed to stop all the traffic, and by doing that, he broke the law. So now he has been lined up for a potential fine to the tune of £1,000. Good. Kevin O'Sullivan discussed this with climate columnist for The Independent, Donica McCarthy.
That's like saying a gunman might possibly kill a kid, but they might not. Come on, Kevin.
Well, that's true.
It is true, and actually the law states that we shouldn't be wandering around with guns.
Well, again, you've done that's a ridiculously emotive comparison to make. A guy on a mobile phone in his white van is not equivalent to a guy with a gun in his hand, is he?
Yes, he absolutely is.
Oh, come on. That's ridiculous.
Why? How many people are killed by guns?
Oh, come on. It's a guy on the phone in his car. He's not a killer.
Well, that's actually where you're actually completely wrong. The fact
he's definitely a killer every single time, is he?
I did not say that. I said they are... Well, okay.
Well, explain to me why he's the same as a gunman.
Somebody is killed or seriously injured every 3 days by a driver in the UK using a mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
we should bring this to an end, just like we brought drunk driving to it, to being punished correctly. And this guy's doing his civic duty. Millions of drivers think it's okay to wander around with a phone that potentially can kill a kid, a pensioner, or a nurse.
Okay, well, we're widening the remit of who they might kill. It's not just kids then.
Well, you know...
you said kids because it's more emotive. Makes your point more strongly.
Yes, because I, as a member of...
It might kill a kind of middle-aged Nazi white guy, mightn't it? What would you think about that?
As a co-founder of Stop King Psychs, I have had the unfortunate experience to constantly meet families whose children or parents or husband has been killed by a driver. I meet those people. It is phenomenally emotional to those people, and it is a value to society that we should not have people driving around in a way that is even worse than drink driving. Do you support drink driving?
Of course I don't. But I also don't. Let's get this straight. I don't support talking on the phone while you're driving. It's not a safe thing to do. Good. Of course I don't. But here's what I don't support more. I do not support the idea of a nation full of nasty little sneaks running around with their phones, taking films of their fellow citizens and running to the police and going, "Look what he did." Do you want to live in a nation like that? It's pathetic.
Do you know the actual stats are that 4 times more drivers report driving offences to the police than cyclists? 4 times more.
That's because that's numerically because there's more car drivers than there are cyclists.
Yes, but do you condemn them as well?
Well, it depends in what circumstances they do it. If they make a point of going round with a camera, filming people breaking the law and then running to the police to wreck their lives, then no, I don't support them.
No, actually, what's wrecking lives is people's bodies being crushed or their lives destroyed in a crash by a driver.
But what about the cultural implications of a nation full of nasty little sneaks going round filming their fellow citizens and then reporting them to the police? Sounds like kind of 1970s East Germany to me.
Well, what we have is a culture of actually tolerating lethal behaviour by drivers in our society. And I would argue...
Yeah, but you have to
I would argue that we have a car-centric society that's lethal. It's damaging the climate. It's damaging people's lungs. And it's actually clogging up our economy. What we need to do is move to a society where our towns and cities, people travel around not in cars, but in bikes, public transport, or walking. That's the sort of society we need to be moving towards.
Kevin O'Sullivan speaking with climate columnist for The Independent, Donncha McCarthy. Now, I have to tell you, I have been on the receiving end of this. I protest my innocence, but to give you a brief summary, I was driving down a one-way street, in the correct direction, I must stress, and a cyclist was coming in the other direction. Legally, also, by the way, I should stress, cyclists were allowed to do that. And apparently he felt so threatened by my driving, he was forced, in inverted commas, by the limited space I had, thanks to parked cars, so he had to move to one side to avoid me and subsequently jump off his bike. Now, I didn't think a thing of it. Next thing I know is I'm getting a message from the police informing me of their intention to prosecute me for something akin to dangerous driving. It's all in the past now, but what a load of nonsense. When did we get to a stage where cyclists have more protection on the roads than the four-wheeled vehicles that roads were actually designed for initially? As far as Kev's conversation is concerned, I don't see how one can compare a lunatic waving a gun around with someone being silly enough to use a mobile phone whilst driving. I'm not the biggest fan of arguing based on hypothetical situations. Anyway, however, if you are going to make a point about the danger of a certain type of behaviour, such as using a phone behind the wheel, educate people with statistics. Don't make stupid comparisons in a bid to scare someone into changing their ways. I would have thought that we learnt how that works out during the pandemic, when Project Fear tried to tell everyone they were going to kill someone if they didn't wear a mask or get jabbed. I am genuinely in two minds here. I hate the thought of doing the work for the police, but at the same time, I don't like it when people take the law into their own hands. Feel free to tweet me, by the way, and say what you think at Mr. Phil Dave or at Talk Radio. Kevin O'Sullivan will keep you company every Monday to Friday between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. right here on Talk Radio. And that's it for this edition of Clashes of the Week. From me, Phil Dave, thank you for the pleasure of your company. And do make sure you stay tuned to the home of common sense. Of course, this is Talk Radio.